having discussed that what are the barriers in communication, today we will be discussing how groups function in an organization, because very closely tied to this is the group behavior. And if you recollect, last time we were discussing that there could be at least 3 types. We have categorized them as as the 3 types of broadly: the physical, semantic and the psychosocial barriers. But then that is related to the organizational functioning, which actually is a group behavior in an organization. What is a group? When you understand a group, is it just head count of people? Group, do you understand by just head count of people, or group has something more than that? Because we are using groups for decision making. In general, if we are talking about groups in an organization, which is very important for participative management, setting objectives, because more knowledge is available from combined membership. That is why groups are important, and evaluating alternatives because of the wide range of critical viewpoint. Before we discuss further on this, we should first understand what is the meaning of a group, and do we consider head count of people as groups? Well, obviously more than one person has to be there, but suppose you are waiting at the bus stop, waiting for a bus. Do you form a group? Do you? Why don't you form a group? This is because you must have some cohesiveness, you must have some common purpose, of course, is there, but there is no interaction. So, when we call it as a group, the people must have interaction, people must be aware of the fact that they are members of a group, and there are some group norms, and they have to behave according to these group norms. Therefore, just head count of people, we do not call them as group. Group is something more than that, and that is why in an organization, when members are there, we call them as groups in an organization. As you can understand then that the group could be formal or it could be informal, because when we are talking about groups in an organization, you have the formal group in terms of different departments, you have different teams working in an organization, different task force working in an organization, achieving organizational goals. But in addition to this, when we are talking about any industry or any organization, you also have informal groups. Like here you have come from different organization, different the background, different say the schools and colleges, and if you get into a group, this is because of some kind of a psychosocial reason. There may be an informal group functioning in an organization. Is it clear to us? Now, whether you like it or no, the formal and informal groups both work simultaneously, even though in your company charter you have some kind of a division that okay, this person, this is the group or this is the task force for a particular job, and they will report to this person, and there will be so many meetings and so on. That is a formal group in an organization. But in addition to this, you have the cliques, you have the informal groupings, and they also share some common norms. You can think about it when amongst yourselves, you must be member of a group, either you are playing cricket or you are following a particular club, or you have got some other hobby, or you belong to a particular city, or you belong to a particular religion, you speak a particular language. There could be many reasons behind forming an informal group, but informal groups are also the pressure groups in an organization. Okay, so when we are talking about making decisions in an organization, we have to understand how people behave in a group and what are the repercussions of this for the organizational decision making. Okay. Nevertheless, we all realize the fact that if we have a group, we can have a better decision, because many persons will give their point of view, and also the wider range of we can say the critical viewpoints that we might have. So, if we have to decide about any strategy for the further expansion of a company, if you are involving people in decision making, you will have much wider perspectives, and that is why groups are very important for running any organization. Okay. On the other hand, we should also understand that we have no choice also. If formally you do not want to involve them in decision making, informally anyway they are parts of a group, and if not at the place of work, off the work, they are going to discuss with each other. Okay, and the informal group is working in an organization anyway. Very closely tied to this whole concept of understanding group behavior in an organization, and how does that have its impact on the overall management process. We have to understand that there are different types of communication systems which are related to the formal groups and informal groups. Formal groups, we have seen in our discussion on communication process, that the formal groups will have say the formal communication. Okay, these are the official orders and the reports and things like that. But additionally, informal communication also works, that we had discussed when we were trying to understand the communication process in an organization. One very interesting part of a communication process in the informal sector perhaps is the grapevine. Have you heard about this word? Grapevine communication? Maybe some of you have heard. For others, let me just explain that grapevine. Have you firstly have you seen that creeper of grapes? Grapevine, what we call. Have you seen that? That has a very special character, grapevine. The special character of grapevine perhaps will be that from one shoot you have number of shoots. I'll just suppose the grapevine starts like this. Okay, it has many shoots coming up at any time. So, the grapevine, that means it actually goes like a very quick information, often informal information, which may be very exciting or which may be very crucial to people, and many a times something that you began with, this may or may not be in the exact same order. I am sure you remember in the childhood, what the game that you were playing. Okay, you were trying to say something to people, and then when it goes through so many people, it might also change its character. Okay, but one very interesting case I will tell you. There was a manager who wanted to quit, and he was trying to exhaust all his official whatever sanctioned leave, and in his office people knew that he was unwell, and well, everyone thought that he was unwell, but his basic idea was that he wanted to quit, so he wanted to make use of whatever sanctioned leave were there in his account. At the marketplace, his wife meets someone, and she speaks to someone else that my husband has got a job of some 5 lakhs, and he is going to quit this place. So, he is just on leave, and as soon as the leave is over, he is going to quit and things like that. Okay. Now, the wife goes and talks to the third friend of hers. Okay. Then they chat about it. I am talking about formal, informal. You can see how the grapevine, the whole thing goes. Okay. Like this, the information goes on, and finally, this information through the grapevine, okay, comes to the management, and that had a serious sort of that was a serious thing for the management, because they never, the efficient employee, they never wanted him to leave, and if the information was true. So, such a serious information was coming through the grapevine to the management. Now, what the management should do about it? Okay. So, what we are trying to understand here is that group behavior is very closely tied to the communication process also, and the informal grouping and informal communication sometimes becomes very important part of the whole process of functioning. That is why we have to understand that groups are very important for making decisions. Now, where do we use groups in decision making? Let us see. Here I am trying to talk to you about that when we are talking about groups, we have to see that the time available is sufficient for an effective group functioning. We have discussed that in some other reference also. For example, in participative management, we have discussed that the time available should be sufficient. Otherwise, we cannot really involve group in decision making. For example, in an emergency situation, it is difficult for us to really involve group in decision making. Then the enough information should be available to group members to make their valuable, make them the valuable participants, or in other words, we can say that in order to make a contribution as a member of a group, enough information should be available to them about whatever technical thing, about whatever managerial thing we are asking them to give information. They must have enough information. Then participants' commitment is very important. Participants must be committed. Participants must be committed to the decision outcomes, and the decision is non-programmed and uncertain. See, if you have a programmed decision, in that perhaps you do not need a lot of we can say the brainstorming. If that is a programmed decision, you know that the outcome of this decision is going to be fixed according to certain guidelines. In that you do not really need the group discussion. You understand the programmed and unprogrammed situations. Okay. In fact, as you understand in human sciences, in fact majority of the situations may be unprogrammed because of the contingency approach that we have seen in this course. Okay. And moment it is unprogrammed, we need to involve people in decision making. Okay. That is because human behavior is complex, human mind is complex, and of course, the social system is very complex, and all these contribute to the functioning of overall organization. Also, if management wishes to develop subordinates' ability to make decisions, this is also very important. Unless you give them opportunity of real decision making or participate in the decision making process, you will find that they will not really get matured. And that is why we would certainly like that people should be given this opportunity. Okay. So, in other words, it is a good socialization for the members, particularly the younger members, good training in communication and decision making, how to really conduct yourself in the formal or informal situations. Okay. So, it is very important for any decision maker to look into the process of employee behavior or group behavior. So, you have seen that we have a very formal way of giving instructions, but we cannot ignore the informal part of it. Both are equally important, and the decision making situation has certain parameters, certain prerequisites, as we have tried to show here, the situations which call for a decision making using group behavior, which is beneficial to both individual as well as the organization. Linking this to the other factors of group decision making, we also find that if you are taking decisions using your group or the members of your organizations, basically in this whole process what we are also trying to talk about a very special kind of a leadership style, which we are going to discuss after discussing group behavior. But basic idea is that the manager should not be very autocratic. Okay? He should be participative, democratic in an organization. So, if we are using group decision making, then the broader perspective for the problem definition and analysis perhaps could be achieved. And as you can see that more knowledge, more facts and alternatives could be evaluated. If we are discussing, then that clarifies the ambiguous problems. Well, there is and reduces, I think this please ignore this, and reduces uncertainty about alternatives. Reduces uncertainty about the alternatives. And therefore, group behavior or group working results into participation, which fosters member satisfaction and support for decision making. So, you can see that we are talking about the decision making process and how important is it for a manager to understand what is group behavior. So far we have discussed what is a group, how do we make a distinction between the head count of people and a group, and how are they important for decision making in an organization. At this point, we should remember that when you are part of a group, whether it is your football team or whether you are member of a department or you are member of a some kind of a hobby group, moment you become a member, there is some kind of a bond among the members. Okay? This bond is not written really, this is an unwritten bond where you see yourself as a member of that group. You are aware of this fact that I am member of that group. Particularly I am talking about the informal groups. You can look back and you can see that how many groups you are member of. I am sure you will be able to see that you are member of 1, 2, 3, 4 groups. Why? Because the formal groups are there are informal groups, there are hobby situations, okay? And the group, once you have achieved the objective, sometimes it may cease to be there, particularly the formal group. Formal groups are the departmental memberships, it could be a task force, it could be any kind of a team, and team is a special group, type of group. Have you given thought to that? Team is a very special type of group. Why do not we call every group a team? The reason is that typically in a team, when we make a team, we try to include members who have complementary characteristics. Okay? So, somebody is good in this, somebody is good in that, okay? And then when they work as a team, the outcome is real excellence, because everyone contributes in his or her own way when you have a team. That is how when we are doing our assignments also, I was trying to tell you that make a team At that time also I tried to say not a group, but make a team, and your group members must have some special sort of either interest or some kind of some special attribute. Okay. Someone wants to be very social, someone wants to write the report very well, someone wants to do the library work, okay, or someone wants to really compile and make a very good presentation. Okay, that is the team. And once the work is done, okay, we have achieved the objective, then the team ceases to be there. Okay. But in informal grouping, often we have found that it goes on for a much longer time, because the psychological bond is so strong. When you have the informal grouping, you have a real bond. There is a group cohesiveness. You have the intrinsic group standards, and even if you are doing say a course for 4 years, say your BTech program or whatever, okay, you will find that you become friends in the first year, and then your friendship goes on and on and on for many years. This is because of some kind of a psychological bond. Okay. Whereas formally, when you are registered for a course, you are part of a formal group, and a semester you become friends. Okay. After that, you may or may not continue as good friends, you may just know each other. So, that is the difference. When somebody comes to work in your industry, okay, there could be informal grouping as well. And what also we are trying to understand here is that manager cannot afford to ignore the informal groups in an organization. You may say that I have nothing to do, beyond the work, what the person does, but actually that may become very important for the manager to know that informal groupings are equally important. Formally, of course, they are part of your decision making process, but while managing an organization, your informal groups are equally important. However, see, as even the best thing might have a few disadvantages, even the group behavior might also have some disadvantages. Okay. So, as a manager, while you are prepared and all prepared and you understand that group management or the team management is a very good strategy, yet we have to understand that what could be the disadvantages, so that you take a precaution to that and just take care. Obviously, it's time consuming, because once we are sitting in a group discussion, it becomes a process where we are taking a lot of time. And if you want to compromise decision may satisfy no one sometimes. So you have to really take care, okay, that everybody's point of view is taken care of. See, when you are giving them this opportunity, the concept of group think emerges. You understand the group think, maybe you can try to translate that yourself. Group think. See, we become part of the total that group, and some kind of a group thinking is going on rather than the individual thinking. Okay. And in that what happens, that the dissent, which is a very healthy aspect of or the opinion diversity as we may call it. It may be a dissent, not necessarily a dissent in that a very serious sense, but opinion diversity perhaps explains much more. That sometimes when we are sitting with group decision making, opinion diversity and rarely of course dissent, this may be reduced, and as a result of that maybe a person has a very creative idea, or maybe a person has very novel experience based on which the person tries to say that the new policy that we are going to use perhaps may not be very fruitful. So, we may take it as a dissent, or we may take it like his experience. Based on that, the person might say that he is in a position to say that no, the policy that we are going to use is not really very beneficial. But in a group, often we reduce these chances because of the group think process. All of us when we are sitting in a group, we tend towards a particular group think. Okay. So, manager has to take care of that even if group think is there, are we taking advantage of the individual creativity or individual experience or individual point of view. Only then the decision should be taken. Okay. So, manager's job actually becomes very challenging whenever you are taking groups. So, when you become managers, you have to and often you have to conduct meetings at the formal level, and while you are conducting meetings, you have to take care of some of these issues. Now, also important in this process are the knowledge over skill, I am sorry here, knowledge over skill and wasted resources if used for the program decision. Okay. Also at the disadvantage we are, this is skill. So, we can see that even though it looks like that the group behavior is not very important issue, but we find that it is very important for any manager to manage a situation, and that has many sensitive issues I mean sort of a tie to the whole understanding of group behavior. So, there are authors, they have given number of hypotheses. For example, diffusion hypothesis, one of the authors has given that diffusion of responsibility hypothesis, that the responsibility is diffused in a group situation. So, manager, whereas joint decision making is the need for the for the time, yet we have to take care that the diffusion of responsibility should not take place. Otherwise, what will happen that in a group situation the responsibility gets diffused in such a way that at the end if there is a failure, nobody wants to take the responsibility. So, this is one issue that has been debated in the literature of management so far as group behavior is concerned. Okay. Now, we are talking about people in organizations, say the employees and the managers and their relationships, and moving on from motivation, we have discussed the communication process and how will that motivate people as well as how to understand the whole process, because that becomes very important for you as a manager. And very closely tied to that communication process is the group behavior that we have discussed now. In the later part of the course, again we might refer to some of these issues when we are looking at the further applications. At this point, we should also remember that as the members of groups or as members of an organizations, we have to play different types of roles. Have you given thought to that, that you play different roles in your life? Okay. These are not the roles that we are talking about, the roles that you are playing for any kind of a dramatic or anything, but the idea here is quite similar, that in our lives also we are playing roles, and the roles are of many types, but we are trying to understand that under the ascribed roles and the achieved roles. Ascribed roles and the achieved roles. You can achieve certain roles, or certain roles are ascribed to you. You can't do much about it. You have to play certain roles. And when we are talking about a member of an organization or a manager managing a situation, one has to understand these dynamics of various roles which impinge on everybody's behavior, the ascribed roles and the achieved roles. And the reason for that is that we play many roles at the same time. You may have to play role, say in the family, for example, somebody's brother, somebody's son, somebody's daughter. These are the roles we play. Okay. At the place of work, you are the general manager, or you are the industrial worker, you are the supervisor, you are the marketing manager, and also you play for example, games. So, you are the team manager. So, at the same time you are playing many roles in your life, also at the place of work. Okay. So, at the place of work, as we have seen, that you may be general manager, but you may also be friend of somebody. Okay. And when we are trying to understand that we play many roles at the same time, sometimes there is a possibility that these roles may also be in conflict with each other. Is it possible that the roles could be in conflict with each other? Sometimes, because certain expectations are there about certain roles, and in a formal situation, suppose some other expectations are there in that role, and then the person is in conflict. But in order to give performance, because see, the performance management is the key term that we are always trying to achieve through whatever concepts we are discussing. Performance, productivity, efficiency, commitment, these are the issues we are trying to achieve whenever the whole course on management we are discussing. Okay. At the level of individual, at the level of group, and at the level of organizations. Okay. This we have discussed in the earlier part of the course. So, now once you are playing roles, how roles could also be in conflict, that is a very important issue. Let me just take one example. There are very many, of course, but let me just take one example of women. Okay, women at the place of work, especially women with small children, they have the responsibility of small children, and at the same time they are working in some office, some industry or some other organization. Here the responsibility of being a mother of small children and also member of a formal organization, sometimes these two responsibilities might be in great conflict. Once perhaps the children are grown up, this conflict perhaps reduces or even totally diminishes. Okay. So, these two roles may be in conflict at least in a certain number of years, and one has to really cope up with this role conflict at that time. So, management has to decide about the kind of a role conflict that people might have in the organization, and so we have to design some kind of a strategy for work where the role conflict could also be taken care of. Next to our understanding of the roles that we play, in fact, let me just come back to the roles issue once again. You must have heard about roles that we play, and there are some books like, have you ever gone through a book called Games People Play, or I Am Okay, You Are Okay? Maybe some of you have you had an opportunity of looking at these books. Okay. We have been talking about this ever since the Games People Play and I Am Okay, You Are Okay. Basically these are the issues of management in terms of how people play different roles, and can these role playing strategies be made as the managerial strategies. So, why did I talk about that? That the games people play and the roles people play. In fact, life is full of roles that we play, and in a formal organization you have to play different types of roles. So, when the issue of I am okay, you are okay comes, or the issue of games people play that comes, some of you must be wondering that madam is talking about which games and which I am okay, you are okay. Here something very interesting I am going to talk to you about. This is that all of us play some roles. In fact, in a theoretical proposition called transactional analysis, the whole idea of roles has been very beautifully put as a real strategy for managing. That is, Harris, one person, he has written these books, okay, and Eric Berne was the person who actually first talked about this theory, Eric Berne. Starting from Sigmund Freud's theory. Well, I am not really discussing Sigmund Freud's theory in this course in a big way, but just let me make a mention here that Sigmund Freud has talked about a theory of psychoanalysis where ego states have been discussed, and in this proposition we call it transactional analysis. We are talking about that how we transact our points of views, behavior. Okay. So, the transaction is not, we are not talking about transaction of money here, we are talking about the transaction of communication and interpersonal behavior. We are talking about transaction of communication and interpersonal behavior, and the basis for discussion is to understand transactional analysis proposed by Eric Berne. Very interesting theory Eric Berne proposed. So, he has taken his thread from Sigmund Freud's ego states, but Eric Berne has proposed that our behavior or our interpersonal behavior gets affected by three factors: our life philosophies or life positions, we can say that, our ego states and the transactions that we have. Okay. Now, the ego states, first I am taking the ego states. Eric Berne has proposed that the ego states could be categorized as the parent, adult and child. Ego states, okay, parent, adult and child. Now, this has got nothing to do with your chronological age. Okay. You may be child or you may be adult or parent. That has got nothing to do with your chronological age or the role that you are playing, as a student here or as a brother somewhere, nothing to do with that. Okay. But every adult develops some kind of a ego state. So, a person at 50 plus may also be in the child ego state, or a person of your age may also be in a parent ego state. Okay. Then life philosophies, very interesting life philosophies. So, here we have seen three ego states are the parent, adult and child, that we just now I have discussed that with you. These are of course the transactions. And when we are talking about the philosophies of life, very interesting fact is the philosophies of life, which will include something like the philosophy, I am not okay, you are okay. Okay. I am not okay, you are okay. Okay. This is one philosophy, I am not okay, you are okay. Second one is, you are okay, I am not okay. Second one is, you are okay, I am not okay. Isn't it amusing? The third one is, I am not okay, you are not okay. You can see, and the fourth one is, I am okay, you are okay, the fourth one. Okay. And these are the Okay. So, transactional analysis has proposed that our life philosophies or our life positions could be of 4 different types. Okay. Do I repeat? I am not okay, you are okay. Some kind of a inferiority perhaps I have. So, I always believe that I am not okay and others are, so I am bad and others are very good. The second type is I am okay, you are okay, but sorry, I am not okay, you are okay. Okay, I think I am not okay, you are okay. I think here what I wrote here is I am not okay, you are okay, you are okay, you are okay, I am not okay. Okay. Is it all right? No? I am not okay, you are okay. Okay. I am okay, you are not okay. Is it all right? Okay. Then I am not okay, you are not okay. I am okay, you are okay. Is it all right? The 4 combinations I am using? 4 combinations. These are 4 philosophies. Okay? 4 different philosophies of life. Isn't that amusing? Can you think about it? What is your philosophy? Can you think about it? Okay. And your transactions at the place of work, your transactions at the place of work will actually get affected by the kind of a life philosophy that you have, the kind of ego state that you have. And the transactions that we have. Okay. So, what are the transactions then? Keeping these 2 in mind, we have the transactions. Okay. So, that means every person has 3 ego states: parent, adult and child. Of first person, then parent, adult and child, the second person. Okay. And this is one situation. Okay. This is one situation, and we want to transact. Do I repeat? Transact means we transact in our interpersonal situation. So, it is a communication, transaction, communication, transaction. Okay. Now, adult to adult transaction. Adult to adult transaction would mean that this is a transaction at the most logical, most adult like transaction. So, the most logical, most data based transaction. Okay. It could be as simple as what is the time now, and you give a reply, adult to adult, no emotions, no, not many sort of other hassles. Okay. But this is so the official level, okay, you have the adult to adult transactions, but often we find that in our day to day life we have transactions where parent to child transaction is there. Okay. Parent to child, that is the transaction, the other situation we have tried to draw here. Okay. From parent to child, parent ego state is dogmatic, the person who has parent ego state is dogmatic, whereas the child ego state may be very sort of a childlike ego state, okay. And when the communication begins from parent to parent, that means two persons at the parent ego state, okay. Okay, they are trying to discuss something on the at the philosophical level or at the decision making level, but at the parent to child, okay, why did you come late? The parent ego state, okay. The other person could reply anything, okay, but the other person says, yeah, because I couldn't catch the bus, giggles, child ego state. Okay. What happens that when there is a complementary transaction, that means parent to child and child to parent, that type of transaction, or from adult to adult transaction, these are complementary transactions. So, no stress is generated, okay. Communication starts and then it ends with a perhaps a smile or with a whatever normal behavior or whatever. But problem comes up with us when there is a transaction which is crossed. That means you are talking to someone like the teacher is asking why are you late, parent ego state, and the student instead of saying this happened, that happened, okay, the student starts putting any other sort of a explanation which is as serious or as firm like that, okay. There is a possibility that some kind of a stress might emerge, okay. So, there may be a person or someone is asking for time. What is the time? Adult to adult. The person replies, why are you asking me for the time? Okay, get adult to adult, a very simple question, what is the time? And you reply, why are you asking for the time? Okay, communication breaks. If there is cross transaction, communication breaks. Well, lots have been written about transactional analysis. When we also look at the two references, in fact, the two concepts that I talked to you about. In fact, there are books written on that. I am okay, you are okay is a book. Okay, Eric Burns. Then Games People Play is a book. Okay. So, in both the books, and also there is a third book called Transactional Analysis, and there are many other books. In fact, most of the books on management, wherever we are talking about the behavioral analysis, you will find that reference to transactional analysis will emerge. Okay. So, the idea here is that while we are trying to communicate, we have to see that we are communicating with healthy kind of a transactional behavior. Okay. And in that, of course, there are number of games are also listed. You have done very well, but okay, that is a game. Okay. So there could be many types of games a manager might play, okay, which may be very motivating or which may be detrimental to the functioning of the organization. Okay. So, sometimes you do understand that the kind of games that we play at the place of work are very important parameters in our overall satisfaction, effectiveness and so on. Okay. So in these theories, in fact, in this theory, in these books, various examples are given, which of course relate not only to manager employee relationship or the group behavior, but also some of the books have talked about the marital discord that people might have, you know. Also some of the books have also tried to apply this to that, or to the marketing manager, the shopkeeper and the buyer. Okay, when you go to a shop, the shopkeeper will say, oh, you can't afford, this is very expensive, you can't afford. Okay, moment you know he says it's very expensive, you can't afford, that means in some the transactions, the games that he is playing, okay, and then you immediately decide, oh, is it that I am going to buy only this. Okay, so one can use transactional analysis in many situations, but what we are concerned really here is about how a manager should make best use of transactional analysis at the place of work. Okay. So, in today's discussion we have tried to move from our understanding of communications to group behavior, and how do we play roles in organizations, and how best we can make use of the interpersonal behavior as a strategy for managing a situation. And overall you can see that whether we are talking about a particular type of transaction, whether we are talking about any kind of a role, or whether we are trying to talk about any kind of a team, we all are trying to understand the group behavior, but everything has a motivational property at the place of work. Here we should also understand, okay, in transactions, that sometimes, you know, there are also the transactions that we are talking about, there could also be ulterior transaction, which I have not mentioned in my discussion so far. There could also be ulterior transactions. Okay. There may be some kind of a hidden motive, we can say. Okay. So, the ulterior transactions also sometimes managers might use for the transactional analysis. Okay. Which, so with training perhaps, you know, we can make both the participants, say the employees and the managers, very much aware of this fact that the transactions are very important, and if you can make the best use of your interpersonal behavior in terms of your transactions. Okay. So, next time we are now going to discuss further on this issue, and then we move on to our next discussion.